It's book recommendation time, and the TBR piles tremble in fear. Hello world, my name is Millie Florence, and today this video is about adventure books. Specifically, middle grade adventure books. I would classify the adventure genre as books that take place in the real world, but really crazy, unlikely stuff happens, and it's very adventurous. And sometimes I will allow some notes of sci-fi or fantasy in it, but if it's too fantastical, I will classify it more as urban fantasy. What makes a great adventure book is one that has interesting, rich, realistic characters, an intriguing adventure with maybe a sprinkle of mystery. Being a page turner doesn't hurt, and there's ultimately a lesson or a question or some moral philosophical content at the base of it all, which is what makes it matter and what makes it important. You gotta have that in every book, in my opinion, to make it a good book. Let's get to it. So first up, if you know me, then you will have probably heard of this book, and that is The Mysterious Benedict Society. Most bookworms, like myself, bookworms and authors, have a hard time picking out their favorite book. I still do, but this is pretty high up there, if not my absolute favorite book. It's so good. Plus it's yellow, so I mean, like, you can't compete with the yellowness. The Mysterious Benedict Society is about several children who are asked to complete a series of tests. But these are not just any tests. They end up being very odd tests with very odd answers and questions. And in the end, these four special children meet the maker of the tests, Mr. Benedict, and he tells them that the reason he has asked them to go through these tests is so that he could find a team of children, just like them, to go on a super secret mission to the Learning Institute for the Very Enlightened. That's the basic premise, but there is so much more to it than just that basic premise. The characters are incredible and you want to be best friends with them, and they're so realistic and wonderful. The book is about found family and teamwork and friendship. There are just so many good themes in this book that all intertwine and weave together perfectly. It is absolutely incredibly written, and the writing style is reminiscent of a classic novel, but it still holds up and was not too difficult for me to read when I first read it, which I think I was like 11 or 12 years old. Funny and clever and warm and inviting and just absolutely wonderful, but at the same time it is a page turner and a mystery, and there's a little sprinkle of sci-fi in there. If you don't read any other book that I recommend, read this book. You will not be disappointed. Next up, we have Sweep, the story of a girl and her monster by Jonathan Oxer. This book actually won an award, one of the Newbery Awards, I think the award for older readers or something like that, but I don't have the one with the award sticker on the cover because I liked this book before it was cool. Just kidding. Seriously though, Sweep is an absolutely amazing book. I promise you, you will cry when you read it. Both me and my mom started crying the first time she read it aloud to my whole family. It was so good. Sweep is the story of Nan Sparrow, a girl living in London back in the age of the chimney sweepers, and she is a climber, which means she is one of the many young children that climb up chimneys to clean all the soot out of them. It's a very dangerous and kind of terrifying job, and yeah, I did not know very much about chimney sweeps before reading this book, but afterwards I was like, how on earth was that ever allowed in the course of history? Like, how? Seriously. One of the main kind of theme quotes of the book is, "You save yourself by saving others," and it is just an absolutely beautiful story about love and loss and family. It's just completely rich with British culture and the political and social issues of the time of the chimney sweepers. So super educational, but also like super interesting, believable, rich, beautiful characters. can't recommend this enough. Like, the other books I recommend in this video are really good, but these are like masterpieces, so please read them. Next up we have The Pushcart War. This is such an adorable, hilarious book, and one of my younger siblings' favorites. This book is one of those cool books that was written quite a few decades ago and was said to take place, I don't know, I think it was like 15 years in the future. Obviously, the date that it says it takes place now is like several years ago, but the idea was it's supposed to be taking place just slightly in the future when it was published. The Pushcart War is about the pushcart peddlers on the streets of New York and the injustice of the huge trucks that drive the streets of New York against them. And there ends up being a battle between the pushcart peddlers and the truck drivers in a very interesting fashion. This book is hilarious and awesome and very interesting, but it's also very educational, and I actually first read this at my homeschool co-op because it was a book, kind of a first book about politics and war strategies. And although this is a very like small scale, fictional, humorous war that's going on, it's basically simplifying the bigger problems we see out in the world and the strategies and political strategies that we see used in these problems. And it really gives you a basic understanding for kids of politics and war. All while being like hilarious and awesome and just like the most adorable, awesome, fun book. Me and my siblings laughed so hard while reading this book, seriously. Next up we have another adorable book, which is The Enormous Egg by Oliver Butterworth. This story is so cute and so fun, and it's a great shorter story to give to some of your more early readers, and I promise you they will be very entertained by it. It is about a farm boy whose chicken lays an enormous egg, and a dinosaur hatches out. As you can imagine, all sorts of craziness ensues, and it is so funny and also so sweet. Once again, it's one of those books, it's very fun and very funny, but there is definitely a kernel of heartwarming truth at the base of the book, which I absolutely love. It was one of my younger brother's favorite books, so another book that I highly recommend. Next up, we have Detectives in Togas. Oh my goodness, this book. It is about a school of boys living in ancient Rome who solve a mystery. Imagine basically combining like the classic children's mysteries with ancient Rome. As you can imagine, it is very interesting and funny and quite the hilarious, awesome, adventurous, and mysterious story. I'll admit, I'm mostly recommending this book for its premise and for the adventure. I don't feel like the writing style holds up quite as well. I mean, I read it when I was younger and I thought it was like really good and really funny. Reading it now, I don't think it is as good quality as I thought it was when I was like 10, but it's definitely very entertaining, and if you have a kid who isn't really interested in reading, I would definitely give this to them because it will give them all the adventure that they need and mystery that they need, and you will learn a lot about ancient Rome through this book and be very, very entertained at the same time. Detectives in Togas, check it out. Next up is one of my favorite stories and a, no surprise here, Newbery Medal winner. The Door in the Wall. Oh my goodness, this is such a beautiful and adventurous book. It's very difficult for a book to be both beautiful and adventurous, but somehow this book manages it. It is about a boy living in medieval times who loses the use of his legs, and he wants to be a knight. So obviously, bit of a predicament. Both the internal and external journey he goes through is really inspiring and beautiful. At the same time, the book is very funny and there's lots of action scenes. And the title, The Door in the Wall, ties into its message that there is always hope. There's always a new door in the wall that you can find and go through to your destination. There's always some way to get there. So absolutely wonderful mess. A lot of action, very funny. A great book for boys, I think, because you know, medieval times, there's all the swords and knights and things, but also very well written and pretty historically accurate. Like, I don't know much about medieval times, but it's not cheesy at all. It's very historical and well written. Last but certainly not least, we have a classic from the Mixed Up Files of Mrs. Basil E. Frankenweiler, another Newbery Medal winner. This book, if you have not heard of it, it is wonderful. It is funny and truthful and lovely. It is about a girl and her brother who decide to run away from home. But they don't run just anywhere. They run away to the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City, and they literally stay in the museum. So it's all about them trying to not be found living in the museum, and a mystery that they discover while they're living in the museum. It's one of those lovely books that is super well written, and also the premise is something that young readers will find very interesting. Plus, can we just say, like, the sibling relationship in this book is realistic and hilarious and absolutely perfect. Please check out this book if you haven't already. It's short, but it's perfect. It's so good. Those are all the books I have for you guys today, but I hope you enjoyed the selection. All of the books I mentioned in this video will be linked down below to where you can buy them or find out more. This video is a part of a series of videos I do which are on book recommendations. If you want to watch the previous 2 videos in this series on contemporary fiction and fantasy, both in the middle grade genre, you can find them up here. If you're from the future, I may have some more recommendation videos besides those 2 past ones, and you can check them out on my YouTube channel. If you've read any of these books before, feel free to comment your thoughts about them down below, or if you have any other adventure story recommendations, feel free to comment those down below as well for any watchers who need some more. And for me, because I would love some more middle grade adventure books. That's all for now. Millie Florence, signing out.